Guys, from 3 new vehicle models coming next year, some big things said by the CEO. We got to go over the earnings call recap here in this video, but also some quick important information. First of all, net loss was 697 million. It's all right. I wouldn't say it's good. I wouldn't say it's terrible. It's marginal improvement from Q1, of 26% improvement from Q1, but only 1% improvement from last year, this time last year. Now, a very good thing is the cash and cash equivalents, 3.8 billion US dollars as of June 30th, 2025. But there is a big caveat to that. I want you guys to know. You guys must know this. This is super important. And this is the fact that as of July 2025, NIO has spent that, or I should say invested that 20 billion into NIO China. So NIO Inc. with 27.2 billion RMB has invested 20 billion of that into NIO China, meaning that you'll be left with 7.2 billion at the end of July, basically. So that's equivalent to about 1 billion US dollars. So NIO Inc. itself only has about 1 billion US dollars according to this. All right. So of course that is to increase their controlling equity interest of 91.8% in NIO China. So okay, you got to keep that in mind. So when you see the next earnings report and you see the big cash drawdown, don't be too shocked by that, okay, guys? Now let's talk about some important things that the CEO said in the earnings call. 3 new models coming next year, launching next year. The L80 for Envo, the ES9, which is the big, flagship car, the SUV equivalent of the ET9, and also, surprisingly, the ES7. Okay, so this is going to be the large 5-seater version of the basically ES8, so to speak. So it's going to be the Envo, the NIO equivalent of the Envo L80. Envo L80 is going to be like a 5-seater version, and then the ES7 is going to be NIO branded large luxury 5-seater version. So this is pretty interesting. And then they also talked about how recently the cost of making the 100 kilowatt hour battery pack standard, the change in margins is basically negligible because they removed the incentives such as free battery swap vouchers, 0% financing, etc. So the overall, it's not much difference, okay? And then what's really shocking is they're kind of capped by production. They're working hard to ramp up the Envo L90 production to about 15,000 per month, and then also the ES8 production will ramp up to about 15,000 per month as well by December. And then the aim is to have, like as of Q4 to average around 150,000 vehicles for Q4, which is about 50,000 vehicles per month. And then they also talked about how there's less losses from NIO Power, and that in the future they will aim to use they will try to reduce capex even further and try to use societal funds for swap stations, meaning more franchising partners for swap stations, using outside investment money for that. And then they are right now prioritizing production of the Envo L90. They are capped by production. As a result, they have to delay the production of the Envo L80 to next year, right? And also, because of the cap in production, it also means that the Envo L60 buyers have to wait. So the Envo L90 production eats up some of the Envo L60 production. So that's kind of interesting. And then they're also working with battery partners to wrap up production. Apparently for the ES8, the interest is much better than expected, which is very good. They were very conservative with the interest in this car. But as a result, they had a pace of battery production with suppliers, and this pace needs to be increased to meet the demand. So they are currently capped by battery production of the 102 kilowatt hour battery pack, and they are talking with suppliers urgently to boost the production of that battery pack so that they can deliver those cars, which is, that makes sense. Now, the aim long term is for 20% plus margins for the NIO brand, 15 plus percent margins for Envo brand, and 10 plus percent margins for the Firefly brand. And they talked about how right now, because of their competitiveness in the vehicles, the R&D that they've spent, they're able to achieve some pretty incredible things. For example, the 85 kilowatt hour battery pack for the Envo car is only 400 kilograms, and then the 102 kilowatt hour battery pack for NIO's ES8 is only 500 kilograms, whereas the competitors, if they have a similar battery capacity, their battery packs would have to weigh 600 to 700 kilos. And he talked about this being a big point in the future thanks to weight reduction and space utilization. Thanks to R&D, they're able to really reduce down the cost and bill of materials and weight of the car and use basically less material to make it essentially cheaper to produce and also improving margins. Now, he didn't specifically say how much in terms of margins, but he said there's drastic improvement. And he also mentioned NIO's own NX9031 chip also offered very good improvement in margins thanks to not having to buy the chips from NVIDIA, which he did say it's just huge margin improvements. So that's pretty nice. Now, he has also noted, the CEO has also said that BEV, pure electric SUV sales have increased 20+% so far this year, in the first half of this year, whilst for hybrids and EREVs, they've only increased about 10%. And he also mentioned how right now the era of pure electric SUVs has arrived, because he's mentioning how a lot of formerly EREV makers are focusing on pure electric vehicles, and that is of course a jab at Li Auto, right? Clearly. And he talked about how they will remain competitive in this market. Now, I was honestly hoping for 500 million in losses or less, but obviously that is a little bit too optimistic. They've only realized about 20% of the cost saving measures, so we can expect a little bit better earnings report when it comes to Q3 earnings report. Of course, apart from the big reduction in cash for the investment into NIO China, but apart from that, I think they are still on track for profitability. They're working hard towards it, and these new vehicles, they have very strong margins. They talked about how the 10% margin in Q2 vehicle margin was because of the product shift into the 2.5 NT 2.5 5566. So the new ES8, the new Envo L90, they will have great margins. So this is going to really help with the overall picture. They're going to sell more cars, and those cars will have more margins. And of course, the new 5566 just recently got the battery upgrade, making 100 kilowatt hour standard. That's also going to really help boost sales as well. And of course, they're not using NVIDIA's chips, they're using their own, so that's also improving margins as well. So this is pretty nice. Overall, I'd say this is a neutral earnings report, not extremely bullish, not extremely bearish. So yeah, just take it for what it's worth. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, peace out.